Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The strength of a nation lies in the strength of its citizens. I'm going to repeat that. The strength of a nation lies in the strength of its citizens. Tonight, I have the privilege of sharing the stage with two of the most outstanding citizens Trinidad and Tobago has ever produced. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, political leader of this great party, the PNM, and the Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West. The Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, Lady Vice Chairman of the PNM, MP for Aruka Maloney, Leader of the House of Representatives, and anything else? I don't want to say matriarch, but our guide as young members of the People's National Movement, carrying us into the culture of the party. Cabinet colleagues, executive members and officers of the People's National Movement, parliamentary colleagues, allow me please to recognize my partner in the struggle, Minister Lisa Morris-Julian, local government representatives, our chairman of Diego Martin Regional Corporation, Chairman Sigler Jack, members of the public who are here, members of the PNM family, our listening and viewing audience. I am happy to be here this evening to report to you on what has been happening in the education sector. Certainly, a very difficult time in the country, globally, for education. I started with that Dr. Williams quote, for those of you who know it, the strength of a nation lies in the strength of its citizens, because at the very root, education deals with the quality of citizens a country produces. We celebrated our 59th year of independence, our anniversary of independence, sorry, on August 31st, 2021. And that harkens back to what happened in 1962, when we took the pledge to manage ourselves as a country. And Dr. Eric Williams, the Prime Minister of that time, spent some time speaking to the young people of this nation. I want to mention another quote that he used at that time that is so relevant to us today. To the young people, he said, "To your tender and loving hands," and many of you may know this by heart, "to your tender and loving hands, the future of the nation is entrusted. In your innocent hearts, the pride of the nation is enshrined." And this is the part that I want to emphasize. On your scholastic development, the salvation of the nation is dependent. On your scholastic development, the salvation of the nation is dependent. And I want to keep emphasizing that as we discuss education in 2021 in Trinidad and Tobago. A large part of that pledge of independence to manage ourselves came from the fact that we were to produce the professionals that would run this country. In every area, in every sector, we pledged that we would manage ourselves, be independent, and produce these persons. We produced them through education. And that is why a large part of the PNM's focus over the years has been on education of our citizens. Because if we are to manage ourselves, and if we are to do that properly, then we have to have the human resource required. The government of Trinidad and Tobago, since independence, has taken careful focus on investment in education. If we look at the recent budgets, a large part of the budget has gone to education. 2016, 6 billion, 11.1%. From 2017 onwards, hovering around 5 billion approximately, and just about on average 10% of the national budget to education. And those investments are to cover school infrastructure, 200 million, teachers' salary, and you heard Minister Robinson Regis speak about the fact that even in the difficult times, our teachers have been paid. That's not the same for every country around the world. $2.3 billion of our annual budget goes towards that every single year. That is the extent of the investment in education. Grants to schools, grants to our post-secondary and tertiary institutions. Over 700 million, that's your COSTAT, your UE, your YTEP, your MIC. Over 700 million annually to run the institutions, and then over 400 million in gate to pay tuition for students to attend the institutions. So when we see that large slice of the budget going towards education, it is to invest in our people, in our institutions, our schools, to ensure that they are running over 600 schools in Trinidad and Tobago. It takes significant investment to be able to do that. Education funding has been and continues to be a priority of the PNM government. And why? Because on their scholastic development, the salvation of the nation is dependent. And these words come from the very foundation of our nation. So what do we expect? What is the return on investment expected from the education spend? What we expect will be discipline, tolerant, and above all, productive citizens. Because if we do not have that, how are we to progress our country? How are we to grow? How are we to produce the professionals that will take our country forward? So we need value for that education expenditure. And though we have been producing very valuable citizens, citizens who have been doing well in the 2020 CXC, out of 16 regional awards, Trinidad and Tobago took 8. So we have been producing quite a number of strong academic persons in Trinidad and Tobago, but that is not the full extent of the story. And Minister Maurice Julian can tell you that in many other areas, we are falling behind in terms of the production of the quality of citizens that we need to progress Trinidad and Tobago, that disciplined, tolerant, productive citizen. The more we stop producing that type of citizen, the more money we will have to spend in national security, the more money we'll have to spend in Ministry of Social Development. Again, Minister Robinson Regis went through the cost of our social welfare program. It is huge. And if we are not producing citizens who can manage themselves in this way, then we are destined to keep pouring money into these types of programs when we are spending significant sums in education. So as we speak about education, and as we understand its inherent relevance and fundamental value to our country, then we see COVID-19 and its effects in a different light. Because what has COVID-19 done? COVID-19 has hit at the heart of our education system, where our children and the level and quality of education that they are offered is now compromised. Why? Because they cannot come out to physical school. I don't know how many of us can remember a time like this before. I certainly cannot, and I'm sure we would be hard-pressed to find such a time in our recent history. These are unprecedented times, and it hits at the core of what our country's success rests on. Because remember, our scholastic development is where the salvation of the nation is dependent. So when we have something affecting how our children are educated, we understand that we are affecting not just now, but the future of our country. Minister Robinson Regis went through some of the grants, some of the relief efforts made for COVID-19. Minister of Finance has been speaking over and over about that. More than $5 billion expended. But that is the cost we can measure. What about the cost we cannot measure? What is the cost of a child who has been involved in school, doing well, and then is derailed by an entire year, or worse yet, 18 months out of school, and completely loses their way? What is the cost of that? And multiply that by the number of children that have been affected in this way. It's not about the devices alone, the connectivity. What about the support at home? What about the supervision? And if we multiply that, some studies say that the real cost, the indirect cost of COVID-19, based on its effect on the education sector alone, can run us into the hundreds of millions and trillions even US dollars. And that's what the studies are telling us. So when we think about the fact that our children are out of school, and some people say, you can leave them out of school, they're doing good in the online. Let's understand what that means, because when you look at our essay results, and that's one thing we can hold on to in 2021, what did we see? We saw more students getting over 90 But we saw also more students getting under 30. So what does that tell us? Some are doing better, yes, but many more are doing worse. And that is the cost of COVID-19. That is the impact of COVID-19 on our education system, and not just that, but on the future of Trinidad and Tobago. So even in this time, we have not sat around with our hands rubbing and saying, what shall we do, what shall we do? The Ministry of Education has been hard at work ensuring that we mitigate against the learning loss that would be experienced by our students. What have we done? We have procured over 20,000 laptops, distributed all of those thus far to students whose parents, I should say, successfully completed the means test. That was done, administered, analyzed, results came out, and students have received those devices. I take every opportunity to thank corporate Trinidad and Tobago, who stepped in the gap and has provided to date over 23,000 devices directly to students. And that is something we should be very, very proud of. It shows the mettle of our Trinidad and Tobago citizens reaching in when we needed them to help. So devices have been distributed in large number to our students. MiFi devices, ordered 10,000. We have devices in hand now, and therefore that distribution is about to start this week to ensure that not only do our students have devices, they also have connectivity so that they will be able to get into the online environment. Training for our teachers, and I want to thank the global agencies, UNICEF, CAF, Notes Masters, Commonwealth of Learning. They have reached out to us in many ways, offering training for teachers, offering ebook development, offering funds for device acquisition as well. And so we have collaborated with them, and we continue to do that to ensure that our teachers are trained. Our teachers have now become students while they are teachers. Our parents have become teachers in their own home. That is how COVID-19 has, as the people say, turned up the thing in the education sector. Everything is on its head, but we have been making progress in training our teachers. And I can tell you, in a general sense, our teachers have been happy to upskill, happy to take this training, and to offer to their students in this difficult time what they need. We have used various platforms to offer educational content. Minister Maurice Julian has been resolute on the ECC pullout, and you see that in your Sunday paper, and parents have been benefiting from that. On the radio, on the TV, TTT has been running educational content, and we have had some of the cable channels pick it up to provide educational content to our students, to fill the gaps, to ensure that they are taken care of in this difficult time. Psychosocial support, and I must mention this, because this pandemic has been difficult mentally for so many of our students, our parents, our teachers. It is a difficult time. Change is something that even incrementally is difficult, so far less when one day you are in one system and the next day you are in another system, and you're expected to produce, you're expected as 12-year-old children to write exams, you're expected as 18-year-old children to write exams. This has been difficult. The Employee Assistance Program has been working assiduously with the teachers, the student support services of the ministry, with the students, and even the parents to provide the support for that transition. So in this difficult time, we have done all of that. We continue to do that because the pandemic is not past us. We are still there. However, one most important way has been provided for us to get back to some level of normalcy. A most important thing, and that is the presence of the vaccines. You see, when we brought students out earlier, it was all in this atmosphere of risk because we did not want an outbreak. Our children are our future. We are very picky about our children, and we want them to be safe. And as a parent with school-age children, Minister Maurice Julian, and many of us in here, we understand what that means. We don't want our children at risk. And therefore, the vaccines being available for our children offer us that level of security for the children. So when we say that on October the 4th, school begins for forms 4 to 6, and teachers are expected to come out to teach our children, and our children are expected to be vaccinated to come out physically, it is because we want our children to be safe. We want our future to be safe. Remember, it is upon their scholastic development that the salvation of this nation rests. So when our children come out to school to interact with the taxi driver, to interact with the doubles man, to interact with the person in the cafeteria, to interact with the cleaner, we don't know their vaccination status, but what we will know is that our children have the best level of protection possible, so that even if they are exposed, as we expect they will be, they will not fall sick to the point of hospitalization. That is the best we can do. And I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for his efforts to protect the future of Trinidad and Tobago. There is nothing else that can be done in this time. We have the best available to us. We have it all available to us. And yet still, we are not at that point where we would want to be. Online teaching is not a suitable replacement for face-to-face teaching. I was a teacher. I still consider myself a teacher. I am a certified online lecturer. So when I speak from a position of knowledge. I don't speak from the shadows. I speak from a position of knowledge. It is not a suitable replacement. When I lectured at Costat, the e-classroom was a normal part of our experience, but that was always to be partnered with the physical approach. So it was a blend of the online and the physical that gave you the best result. And therefore, you would have seen our tertiary institutions move seamlessly almost online when faced with the COVID-19 pandemic. However, even they are clamoring to get back to physical learning. And it is even more important for our children, the younger they get, to be able to access physical learning. So yes, we are doing the best we can in the online environment, but that does not mean that it replaces the physical. And so we need to get back to physical. We speak all the time about the education transformation that we want in Trinidad and Tobago. And we need that. And we are coming back to you, the public, as we came in November of 2020, with specific recommendations on several areas that we need for transformation of the education system. So in November 2021, expect the Ministry of Education to again be knocking on your doors for your comments on these specific areas. However, that transformation about which we speak is all envisaged in a context of children being out to physical school. We would have opened 8 projects, school construction projects. The Honorable Prime Minister was present for 3 of them. Beautiful buildings, wonderful investments, large investments. And the Ministry of Education is poised to now do another phase of investment on those school construction projects that we have to finish. More than $400 million invested in these projects. But what is the building without the students? How do they get the benefit of the investment, the full benefit, if they are not present to learn from their teachers, to have the unofficial curriculum taught to them, to show them how to behave, how to dress, how to carry themselves, how to speak, how to sit? Anybody went to a girls' school, they would understand how important that is. Huh? All of these things, and before I said he went to a girls' school, all of these things are critical. So it is not just about interacting over a screen. It is about getting our children back out. And if it is one message that I want us to remember, is what was left for us laid at that foundation in 1962 on the scholastic development of these children, these students. The salvation of this nation is dependent. And that scholastic development is threatened by a virus that prevents our children from coming to school. But we in Trinidad and Tobago are fortunate to have a protection against that for our children. So we consider then that other countries have been able to go back to normalcy. And sometimes I hear people saying, why we just can't go back to normalcy? But the first thing that will derail all of that is if a child gets very sick in a school environment. A child whose sickness could have been prevented in terms of the magnitude of it by the vaccine. In other countries, we have children going back to school, but their vaccination rates The US, 54%. The UK, 65%. France, 63%. Japan, 51%. Trinidad and Tobago, 31%. So it is not the same. We can't compare ourselves with everyone else because we are not at that level of vaccination. And it means then that the risk to our children is more significant. We at the Ministry of Education are working hard to transform education. We are working hard in this difficult time of the pandemic to ensure the educational continuity for our children. But at the end of it all, we expect our children to get back to school. They need to get back to school, or what we are seeing at the SEA level, that achievement gap widening is going to be exacerbated the longer they stay out of school. There are children whose lives are taking a completely different trajectory because they do not have the benefit of in-person learning. So as I close, I remind us of the words, and by now you might say it by heart, and that will be a good thing, of our first Prime Minister, speaking about the children, the students of this nation, on our Independence Day. And he told them, on your scholastic development, the salvation of the nation is dependent. On your scholastic development, the salvation of the nation is independent. I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for entrusting me with the responsibility of overseeing that scholastic development at this critical time in Trinidad and Tobago's history. And I want to assure the public that myself and Minister Maurice Julian will work as assiduously as we can and continue to make the progress that is necessary. But we need the support of the population as well. We all have to do our part. Our first Prime Minister laid the foundation at that time, not knowing that in 2021, we would face a pandemic that would threaten the very future of our country. And our present Prime Minister has taken up the mantle and has provided the solution so that the words of our first Prime Minister could be continued, that the scholastic development could save this country, be the salvation. Our present Prime Minister has done his part. Our first Prime Minister did his part. The Ministry of Education will do our part. It is up to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to do your part. The future of our country depends on our children having the best chance of success. May God bless us all as we continue to do our best for our country and for our students, because on their scholastic development, the salvation of this nation is dependent. God bless you.